Hotel here in our nation's capital of Abuja for the 2019 presidential debate organized by the NEDG, the Nigerian Election Debate Group, and BON, the broadcasting organizations of Nigeria. I am your moderator, Mark Shegun Edo, and the debate is live on all BON member channels here in Nigeria and across the globe, as well as on YouTube, Twitter, and other social media platforms. The hashtag is 2019 debate. Now tonight, you'll witness history as the candidates vie to convince you that they deserve your vote to be the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Over the next 2.5 hours, they'll give us their solutions to the major challenges facing Nigeria, and I'll ask them the tough questions we all want answered. What we need to hear from them is not a long list of Nigeria's symptoms. We want to hear solutions that can move our great country forward. Now, before I bring out our candidates, please give a warm welcome to the Executive Secretary of the NEDG, Mr. Ezekwesili.
Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to epoch-making event in 2019. This is another story in the making of our democratic journey and political life. Election, they say, is a festival of democracy. But beyond the fanfare of the noise and all the dances on the campaign fields, this is the reality of the genuine and the real needs of the average Nigerian. At the campaign grounds, music and rhetorics had they allowed the truth to be told. This is the reason why this kind of platform is very crucial. An avenue where the real issues are brought to bear, put on the table. The temperature of the nation is being gauged, while the capacity of those who are seeking the highest office in this land are being tested. Tonight, NEDG and BON has made this happen through the assistance and support of some of our partners. Nigerians, wherever you are watching this event, please pay attention to those who have capacity, because that knowledge will help you to make a decision in about 2 or 3 weeks. There's no more sitting on the fence. Brace up and be counted. The stage is set. The future of Nigeria is now. Welcome again to the 2019 presidential debate. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
And thank you, Ezekwesili, the Secretary of the NEDG. Now, the political parties may agree on many issues, they may disagree on many issues, but there is one thing we all agree on. We all hope for a safe and peaceful election next month that are calm, fair, and orderly. Now, our next speaker is working tirelessly to help us achieve that. Please welcome the convener of the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, human rights champion, Mr. Clement Nwankwo.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we're very delighted to be involved and associated with this debate. Debates are an important opportunity for citizens to gauge the candidates and make a decision as to be able to cast their votes. Now, we need an atmosphere that citizens can be able to cast their votes. And on behalf of the Situation Room, I would say welcome. On behalf of Situation Room, I would also like to say that we have outlined thresholds that we expect that this election will fulfill in order to be described as credible. Those thresholds include the responsibility of all candidates in this election to respect the rules of the elections. It includes the responsibility of state institutions to respect the right of candidates to campaign. It includes the responsibility of state institutions to not hinder the activities of political parties and candidates in this election. A free and fair atmosphere for campaigns, a free and fair atmosphere for participation of citizens is very critical for these elections. And we urge all stakeholders, all parties to respect the rules of the game, to eschew violence, and for institutions of state to respect the rights of candidates and political parties to campaign. Much more importantly, we are looking towards the Independent National Electoral Commission to ensure that it prepares to conduct a credible election for Nigeria. Citizens are yearning to vote. They want to see their votes count. They want to see their votes counted, and they want to see this reflected in a true and genuine report on the elections. Thank you so very much and welcome.
Thank you, Clement Wankwo. Good words that we should all heed. Now, there are almost 200 million of us Nigerians, so I guess when we clap our hands, we should be making the loudest noise in the world, right? So please give a warm welcome as I bring in the candidates to the stage in alphabetical order. She is a two-time minister, a former World Bank vice president, and co-founder of the anti-corruption coalition Transparency International and the Bring Back Our Girls campaign, the presidential candidates for the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, Obi Ezekwesili. Next, taking his podium is the business consultant, leadership expert, motivational speaker, and presidential candidate for the Alliance for New Nigeria Party, Fela Durotoye. Ladies and gentlemen, our next candidate has been the Vice President of Nigeria. Now he's a businessman. Ah, very interesting. This is live TV, so anything can happen on live TV. Moving on. Your final candidate is a former Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and a former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now he's the flag bearer of the Young Progressives Party, Kingsley Moralo. Now, candidates, moving on, if you could move up, please. Before we begin the debate, I would like to invite all the candidates. You're standing behind podiums. I'd like to invite you to step forward in front of the, if you may, in the sequence in which you are standing. Come together, please. And I would like to invite everyone in the hall to please stand for the national anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, performed by one of the country's biggest stars in music, Timi Dakolo, ladies and gentlemen.
Arise, O compatriot, Nigeria's call, obey, to serve our fatherland with love and strength and faith. The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. To stand with heart and mind, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
If I could ask you to please take your podiums now. Thank you, Timi Dakolo, for that wonderful rendition of our national anthem. Now, we have five 30-minute segments on topics that matter most to you, the voter, and we'll start with the suitability of the candidates, and then for the highest office in the land, of course, and then we'll move on to the economy, security, education, and health, and then we'll end with 30 minutes on the rule of law, human rights, and corruption. So in that order. Now, my dear candidates, you have agreed to a set of rules. You'll each be given 2 minutes to answer a question or make your intervention, except for your opening statement. We're generous. We're going to give you 3 minutes for that. If you are directly referenced in any shape or form by a fellow candidate, you do have the right to reply, a rebuttal, for 1 minute, if time permits, if we have time in the program. Now, I am a firm but fair traffic warden, so I will stop you. I have a clock over there if you exceed your allotted time so that we can stay on schedule. Is that okay? Now, let's begin the first segment of the 2019 presidential debate, where we hear your opening statements, and this is where we explore your suitability for the office of presidency. And I will start now with the candidate on my left from the Young Progressives Party. Sir, you have 3 minutes to tell us why you should be president.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. On the 29th of May, 2019, I will be sworn in as the 8th President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. With the support and the votes of the Nigerian people. That will happen because I am putting myself forward to serve you, Nigeria and Nigerians. It is time for a different kind of leadership. My government will have a kind of approach to Nigeria's problems that we've never seen before in this country. And that is a foundational approach that addresses the root causes of our challenges. The first of which is, are we a nation, really? Or are we just a country? And as I would argue, a broken one. And so we will come at this problem by first of all defining the foundational philosophy of the Nigerian state, establishing a national ambition around which all of us can unite, that rises above the things that divide us. We will restructure this country constitutionally so that it can actually fulfill its potential. We will establish effective national security. We will work with women as equal partners. They will not just be in the kitchen or the other room, but they will have a seat at the table. We will work with our young people, the youth of this country, as leaders of today, not tomorrow. We will break the backbone of poverty in this country by establishing education and literacy for all citizens of this country, giving them access. We will create skills for all our young men and women, establishing skills training centers in the 774 local government areas of Nigeria. And we will provide access to finance. We will restore Nigeria's standing in the world. Nigeria's place in the world has fallen. We will once more, once again, be strong at home, powerful abroad. We will accomplish all this working together under my leadership as president, because I have been prepared for the office of the president. Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria for 5 years, leading far-reaching reforms in the financial system that have touched the lives of millions of Nigerians, including the bank verification number, saving our banks. 17 years as a United Nations official, and as a professor in one of the world's most prestigious universities of international business and economic policy. I am ready, and it is time.
Thank you very much, the candidate for the Young Progressives Party, the YPP. Now I'll turn to Fela Durotoye, the candidate flag bearer for the ANN, the Alliance for New Nigeria. To many voters watching, you are a relative newcomer. But indeed, yourself, you said that you're not a politician. You've described yourself as, quote, a nation builder. But you aspire to the highest political office in the land. Why should Nigerians put their faith in you and anoint you President Durotoye?
Well, thank you, Mark, and a very good evening to you all. My name is Fela Durotoye. I am a business management consultant, a leadership expert, and a nation builder. And that's really at the core of my heart. Many times when people ask me, who is a nation builder? I say, well, it's really as simple as A, B, C, D. Someone who accepts responsibility for the well-being of his nation, not just his own personal well-being. Somebody who believes in the greatness and the potential of not just the nation, but the people to be able to actualize that greatness. But then C, somebody who commits. Has committed their time, their talents, their gifts, their wealth, their resources. And lastly, somebody who doggedly does everything that is possible to deliver the future of that nation. And when I say the future, I mean a time zone that is yet to come. No, that's not what I mean. I mean everything a nation can be but has not yet become. Everything a nation can do but has not yet done. Everything a nation can have but has not yet possessed. Nigeria undoubtedly is one of the most blessed nations on earth. When you think about the human resources, when you think of the natural resources and the mineral resources, the question is, why haven't we fulfilled our nation's potential? Well, because we have been ruled and not led for the last 50-odd years. And because rulers suppress the potential of others, whereas leaders support those people to release their potentials. I am a leadership expert. I have served the people of Nigeria. I have helped businesses for the last 27 years of my career. I currently mentor over 10,000 business leaders and 20,000 business professionals on the Fela Durotoye Leadership Network. I have dedicated my life to the service of the people of Nigeria. So why am I running for the office? Because we have been failed in leadership and in governance. Those whom we have accepted to go into governance and handle the business of governance are people we probably would not have hired ourselves. Tonight, I know you would hear many of the things that people have done, the former this and the former that. Well, I do not come to you with any former titles. I only come to you with the hope of the future of this nation. Because Nigerians have lost hope. Today you can see that in drug addiction, suicide rates, and in migration. I will restore that hope in Nigerians, and together we will build a new Nigeria where there is jobs and opportunities for all, where businesses succeed, and the son of a nobody can become somebody without knowing anybody, because it will be a nation that works for all. Thank you.
Now we'll move on to our final candidate, and that is someone who will be well recognized in the room, Obi Ezekwesili of the ACPN, the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria. Now, madam, it surprised many of us when you threw your hat in the ring and said, I want to be president. What compelled you to run, and why should Nigerians give you their vote?
Good evening, fellow Nigerians. My name is Obi Ezekwesili, and I'm the presidential candidate of the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria. Nigeria, our country, is in dire straits. Nigeria needs to be rescued urgently. The trouble with our country was identified by Chinua Achebe, one of the illustrious sons of this country, who is now late, when he said that the problem with Nigeria is simply and squarely the failure of leadership. What we see in our country is massive failure of leadership. Our children are failed. Some 44% of our children are stunted because they are malnourished. It leaves a lasting effect on them. Our young ones are hopeless in the midst of all of us because annually, some 2 to 3 million of them would graduate from school, high school, and tertiary education and find no jobs. Our women are being failed. Some 60% of them are poor. Whether it's the north or the south or the east or west of Nigeria, there is massive poverty. We have no business being the world capital of poverty. It is urgent for us to change the direction of our country. Because it is failure of leadership, it means that our politics is culpable. Our politics has become politics by the politicians, for the politicians, and of the politicians. Many of you know me not to be a politician. However, I have been a technocrat that understood the political context of this country, and it's very clear that except we disrupted the pattern of politics that we have, we will continue to fail, and we must no longer fail our people. That is why I am running for office. I bring with me the track record of being able to fix problems. As a technocrat in government, I had many assignments that I had to fulfill. I served the Nigerian people. In serving the Nigerian people, I was conscious of the fact that it is exactly the opportunities that Nigeria gave me that made me the child of a poor public servant and an enterprising mother to become the person that I have become. I have the capacity, the competency, and the character to take on this new direction of leadership that our country deserves.
I think we're going to a break now in a moment, so I would like to say thank you for those opening salvos. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll be talking about the economy. That's what everyone wants to know about on the 2019 presidential debates.
All guests must be seated by 6 p.m.
Presidential debate. I have to inform the audience that there was some jeering to my right earlier in our first segment, so I would ask the audience, please first switch off your phones and please don't shout, jeer or cheer. We want to hear from the candidates, so the laughing, clapping and cheering in the hall, please let's keep that to a minimum. That's a standing rule. We'll make that a standing rule. I also want to say that we were expecting the candidates from the APC and the PDP, but as you can see, they're not here. They were here, at least Atiku from the Atiku Abubakar from the PDP did turn up at the debate. He was in the hall. At the last second, he decided not to appear. So you shouldn't worry about what you can't control. We will continue as is. And we're going to continue with arguably the most important subject to many of us out there as we cast our vote. When you ask voters what matters most to them, you're likely to hear them say the economy, jobs, the cost of living, and ensuring a secure financial future for themselves and for their families. Now, it's no secret that Nigeria's economy continues to face turbulent times. We've just exited from one of the worst recessions in modern history. GDP growth is at a tepid 1.8%. And the latest data in December of last year showed inflation at a whopping 11.4%. We have to sustainably strengthen the economy, boost manufacturing, build infrastructure, modernize farming, and most of all, create jobs. Now, the current government would say, if they were here, that they are on the path to doing that with bold plans and policies. Now, candidates, here is your chance to try to convince us that you can do a better job than them. Now, I'll ask a 2 minutes for a 2-minute intervention in this case. The clock is standing by. And I will begin, first of all, with the candidate from the YPP, Professor Kingsley Moghalu. Now, the economy. This is the single most important thing to many voters as they think, where do I put my mark? Nobody will, as you'll see from what I said, nobody will say that things are rosy. We've heard a lot of promises of what people can do, and we've spoken a lot about many of the problems. We don't really need to hear about what's wrong. I've just said it. We need to hear how we're going to get ourselves out of that. You have a very clear plan. Can you give it to me in 2 minutes, rapidly, colloquially, so that everybody can understand it? Your time starts now.
Thank you. Fellow Nigerians, let's first understand that we cannot fix the economy if we don't fix our politics. Our economy can never grow for as long as we are led by the incompetent, visionless, and recycled and arrogant old politicians that have run this country's economy into the ground and are seeking another 4 years of poverty for us. So let's first understand that the path to fixing Nigeria's economy depends on who becomes president in 2019. Therefore, the first order of business is to elect a president who understands how to manage the economy. My government will fix the economy by taking the approach that I will just spell out very quickly. The problem that we need to solve is that we don't have an economic philosophy. We will have to decide whether we're a capitalist country or a socialist country, and if we are, what type of capitalism we are practicing. So, my approach to the Nigerian economy is, first of all, to focus on reforming the educational system, ensure that our young people have the skills that can make them competitive in the 21st century and the skills that can give them jobs or help them to set up their own jobs. Then we will give them access to finance, which my government will do through a 1 trillion naira venture capital fund, which will give equity capital, not loans that you have to repay, because loans carry interest rates in Nigeria that are too high, or you may not have the collateral to be able to access loans. So we will invest in new businesses that will create millions of jobs over the next 4 years. That's the approach we have. Skills, capital, literacy, that's what will fix Nigeria's economy and take it into industrialization.
Thank you very much, candidates from the Young Progressives Party there. If I have time, I'm coming back with a follow-up question on that, but I will now turn to your fellow candidate, Fela Durotoye. Now, let me ask you about diversifying the economy. This is not something that is new. I remember my father talking about it back in the day, some 30 years ago. Diversifying away from oil. Non-oil makes up less than 10% of Nigeria's export revenue. It's too low. What are your plans to build the non-oil sector in terms of exports and, I guess, in terms of tax receipts? And what are the 3 sectors? Tell us the 3 sectors that you would target in these new engines of growth.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark, and to the people of Nigeria listening. The 3 most important sectors that we need to focus on will be the sectors that help us not only to grow jobs, but to have great social impact in terms of growing our nation. So the 3 most important sectors are agriculture, housing construction, and road construction. If we fix agriculture, which currently, as we know today, 60% of Nigeria's labor force is currently employed in the agricultural sector, and yet only 35% of our arable land is being used. We will drive aggressively land use for agriculture to 50%. And that will create for us an opportunity to be able to get under 30 million people altogether into the labor force. But that's not all. The infrastructure of this country is completely decayed. And that includes power, roads, and housing. Today, we have 108 million people that are homeless. Today, we have easily a power sector that is really crippling our businesses. So we will ensure that we fix power, we fix roads, and most importantly, we provide housing for our people. Like I said, collectively, this should be able to provide for us 30 million jobs in Nigeria. And I will be happy to continue to share with you exactly how in each of the segments we'll be able to do this. Because for agriculture, what we definitely need to do will be to make sure that we drive our commodities board so that farmers can once again be able to have an offtake when they do produce. Lastly,
I don't think you have a lastly. If I come back to you, you'll get your chance. Now, I have to move on to the candidate on the far right. That is the candidate for the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, the ACPN. Madam, there was a sobering report recently. It said Nigeria now has the highest number of poor people in the world. It's also true that the number of poor people living in extreme poverty in Nigeria has actually fallen, though, in the last 5 years from, I think, 112 million to 90 million. But the figures are still not good. If you are elected as president, tell us, in the simplest and most specific terms, how many Nigerians will you lift out of poverty, and how are you going to do it?
Our plan is to lift at least 80 million Nigerians out of poverty. The way that we plan to do this is that when you look at the Nigerians who are poor, it is very clear that they are poor because they earn below 700 naira a day and live on it. What therefore needs to happen is that this majority of Nigerians, over 50% of them, would need to improve their productivity. When people have higher productivity, they earn more. When they earn more, they lift themselves out of poverty. What are the ways of enhancing their productivity? Take a typical member of the Farmers Club in Nigeria. They actually constitute 1/3 of our workforce. And 60% of them are women. When you give inputs to women, they outperform even their male counterparts by as much as 40% in output. That essentially means that women will be lifted out of poverty enormously. The structure of our economy is such that services constitute 60% of it. The services is not high-end services. It is low productivity services. And so our focus would be on removing the barriers that stand in the way of these operators in the services sector. That would include improvement in policies that target the people in those sectors. It would include removing regulatory barriers that stand in the way of formalization. It would include prioritizing the investments that give public utility for their use.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you. I'm going to turn back to Professor Mogalo of the YPP. Now, one big concern is the cost of government, paying for government. Yeah, the amount of Nigeria's budget that goes on recurrent expenditure. That's things like salaries and overheads, compared to capital expenditure, like building infrastructure, I suppose. It's a mathematical equation that needs to change. How would you practically and significantly reduce government spending?
Thank you very much. We're going to do that, first of all, by going into a program of recruitment and training and skills in our security sector that will reabsorb a lot of people away from the normal public service, people who are still young, to the police force. We intend to recruit 1.5 million new policemen and women over 4 years. That's one. Number two, we're going to have to retrain and rationalize the federal public service. How do we do this? It's not by kicking people out into the streets or just sacking civil servants. No. It is by having a program that is very clear in terms of helping them to move into more productive engagements in the private sector and retraining those who remain in the civil service to become much more productive.
That sounds like it's going to take a long time.
No, it won't. No, it won't. Within 2 years, my government will bring the cost of recurrent expenditure down to 50%. What it requires is political will and the ability to do what needs to be done. That's what needs to be done. Our politicians have carried this expenditure because they want to be, quote unquote, popular. They don't want to do the right thing.
Okay, as you were speaking, I looked over to my right and I saw Dr. Obi, a look go across her face. I mean, do you think that you have a better plan for reducing the cost of government than what we just heard?
But you interrupted my time.
I think you only had 2 minutes, right? I think we came to 2 minutes. I apologize. I will keep that 38 seconds in my pocket and give it to you later.
Okay. All right.
Dr. Obi, please, let's see what you do. Well, how do we cut down the government, the mammoth cost of government?
Well, I would be starting on a good place because the famous Durotoye report that looked into the rationalization of the bureaucracy has made very specific recommendations on the things to do. Some of the existing institutions and bureaucracies or agencies within our bureaucracy actually have no purpose that they serve. And so they have become conduits for bleeding the public treasury. When you deal with those, you're not dealing with a Nigerian who must be catered for. It is illegality that has taken hold, and so you deal with illegality by ending it. Number two is that if you looked at the productivity of our bureaucracy, it does matter that we should find the most competent and put them in leadership position. Today, that is distorted. Most of our bureaucracy ends up being warped in its arrangement. Productivity is not rewarded. It's the lack of it that gets recognized. We will switch that. In doing that, it becomes very clear and evident that any decision you're making on reducing the cost of governance is based on analysis, not merely wanting to get people out. The third thing is that the private sector must lead the economy. Many of the people who are in our public sector, if they found better opportunities in the private sector, they would take it. Most of the employment in our public sector was done by government as a way of pretending that jobs were being created. It's the private sector that creates sustainable jobs, and we will stay with that capacity by doing the right policies to encourage them.
Fela Durotoye. No great nation really progresses without a robust tax system. Name me one. It's hard to find one. Nigeria has one of the lowest tax to GDPs in the world. It's around 6%. I mean, compare that to Norway, which is at the top of that list, 60%. They've got the money to build schools. They've got the money to build roads and hospitals. They've got a system that works. How do you intend to get us a system that works and get Nigeria's tax receipts rolling in?
Well, thank you, Mark. And this is very clear that people are willing to pay taxes when they get value for the taxes that they pay. And unfortunately, one of the reasons why people are not paying taxes right now is that they not only do not believe that their taxes will be wisely or judicially used, but more importantly, because they have seen the wastage and the corruption that is in the system. Of course, there is also no penalties for tax evasion, as we have seen mostly by those who are the wealthy of this nation. So the four things that we're going to do to be able to ensure that we create value and that increases the amount of income that people are able to get, and of course the tax system, is to say, number one, we must reduce the cost of governance and completely eradicate the wastage in governance, which means starting from the presidency. There is no reason why the president's convoy should be a 30-car convoy just to go and drop the president at the airport.
So you're not going to have a 30-car convoy?
I will be riding in a bus that will carry other ministers, rather than have every minister's car trail after the president.
That would be a first. That would be a first.
Secondly, we must reform our institutions, especially our civil service institutions, to ensure that they are delivering excellence in service. Meaning that every civil service institution will deliver service in a way that makes the people realize that we are getting value for our taxes. The third most important thing is that we must then boost the economy such that we can grow jobs and grow the earnings of our people. When jobs are created and when businesses are booming, then there will be more taxes, and then our tax to GDP ratio will continue to grow. And then the last of all is that we must reorient our people and get them to understand that paying taxes is not just an obligation, but it is the way for them to create a sustainable way for their children to be able to have a better nation than the one they live in.
Thank you. Now, if my team is standing by, candidates, I want you to please turn your attention to the screens. There are screens there to your left and your right. Now, we've asked young people to send in their questions from the four corners of the country. And this first one comes from a YouTube content creator with 250,000 subscribers. Roll the tape.
Hi, my name is Dimaume. I'm 28. I'm a YouTube creator focused on beauty and lifestyle. The internet has revolutionized the way we communicate and access information. In the recent years, it has also become a means of revenue generation for many young Nigerians like myself. However, many people in this country still have no access to the internet, and for those with access, it is expensive. My question is, how does your administration plan to make the internet more accessible to Nigerians? And how do you plan to regulate telecommunication companies and internet service providers to ensure that consumers are protected?
Kingsley Moghalu, there is talk of this new industrial revolution that is going to be based on a future of digital, of AI, of all sorts of technology that will take us into a brave new world. Nigeria needs to be ready for it. You've seen some people are already working within that. We have young people, in fact 51% of the people voting at this election are between the ages of 18 and 35. You need their votes. They need jobs. How are you going to create a presidency that fosters the jobs and the environment of the future, the digital future?
Yeah. The focus of my presidency in terms of moving the Nigerian economy away from oil is going to be a focus on innovation. And innovation includes all forms of ICT, which is a big driver of innovation. One of the problems that my administration will solve when it comes to ICT is that you find a heavy concentration of ICT in urban areas, but the rural areas of this country have about 53% of our population, and they are not well served by ICT. We will create incentives for businesses, young tech startups, to move closer to the rural areas and bring more members of our population into the digital age. We are going to create a startup nation that is going to prioritize innovation. And there are many companies that are already doing a great job in Nigeria today. So the point is this, that when I become president, the ICT sector, we're going to focus, first of all, on infrastructure for the ICT sector, broadband coverage for this country. Secondly, we are then going to make sure that the ICT infrastructure moves to the rural areas and brings in one half of our population that is cut off from the modern civilized world. So we are definitely going to move this, and this is something that is going to be good for job creation for young people in this country. That's where the focus is, to create opportunities for startups, and that's where the venture capital fund comes in, because we will give young people investments, 100,000, 500,000, 1 million.
Where are you finding the money?
For the
Where are you
venture
going to find
capital
the money?
fund, I've said it in several statements. 500 billion of it will come from the private sector. It's a public-private partnership. 500 billion will come from the government. So it's a co-investment. And the fund is going to be run by the private sector. It will not be run by the government and become another empire of sleaze, such as we have seen in the present administration.
Now, when you say that's the present administration, it makes me think they're not here, the PDP and the APC, the two bigger parties. They're absent here. They're not here, Dr. Obi, they're not here to defend themselves. I guess I want to ask you what your thoughts are on that for 30 seconds.
I am not surprised they are not here. They have just simply announced their exit from the governance of our country. I think it is important for us to acknowledge that there is a political class that simply needs to fade away from our country. Because the idea that the will of the people will be subordinated to the whims and caprices of our politicians should be a total anomaly. And today, as we in this country focus on the ideas, competitive ideas that would develop our country, if the two dominant parties cared about the Nigerian people, they would come here in order to have a contest of ideas on how we would fix Nigeria. Mark, I must let you know that for the Nigerian people, this is a moment to make a clear judgment as to whether we are connected to the issues that matter to the Nigerian people. We showed up for this debate, not because we're new entrants into politics, and I hope I speak for my two colleagues, but because we believe that it is time for a new kind of governance in Nigeria. It is time for the citizens of this country to take complete charge of the destiny of Nigeria. And so we stand before you today, not because we are the best in the country, but because we come with a sense that our country needs to be immediately rescued from the stranglehold of poor governance, bad politics, and governance failure. I represent a mindset where the citizens who occupy the highest office in the land and give legitimacy to politics should become the drivers of the future of this country. And it starts now.
I have to let fella Durotoye come in here. Fella, you're here, they're not. What does that say?
Well, it says that the future is here. That's what it says. And that all things have passed away. But I must say something to you, and Mark, and to the people of this nation. Pride always comes before a fall. And every time you believe that you have no need to tell the people what it is that you're going to do, it means that you are not there to serve them in the first case. You were going to rule over them. And we should not be surprised, for this has been consistent over the last 20 years. We have had 20 years of rulership, and rulers do not explain to their subjects what it is that they are going to do. They don't owe it to them. What I think the greatest deceit that we've had to deal with in this nation is that rulers called themselves leaders and make us subjects feel like followers. We are not followers, we are subjects to them, and now it is time to be free. We had had 58 years of independence, but not 58 years of freedom. And now the time has come for us to be free of this bad coin that has two sides that I believe are depicted here. And most importantly, it is time for Nigerians to truly begin to evaluate the things that matter and understand that leadership is about competence, about character. Leadership is truly about people who respect people, people who love the nation, and people who will uphold the law. Now, I believe very strongly that Nigeria has a clear choice to make, and that choice has to be made now. But the evidence of it is here for us to see.
It's getting hot in here. It's getting hot in here. Young Progressive Party.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Mark. Like my two colleagues, I am not at all surprised that the leaders of the APC and the PDP have decided to turn their back on the people of Nigeria and tell them finally that they never amounted to much in their eyes. Now, the reason they are not here, there are two reasons. One is arrogance. They believe that the people of Nigeria have no voice and no choice. That you will always come back to them. They believe that you cannot move away from them. They believe they've trapped you. They've kept you in bondage. They've kept you in bondage for far too long, and it is now time for us to send them a message. The second reason they are not here is because they cannot answer the questions. Very simple, very straightforward. They belong to the old class of recycled politicians who want to come to power with a sense of entitlement, but not a record of performance. They want to come to power with a sense of money and power, but not a record of service to the people of Nigeria. They cannot answer the intricate questions of the economy, the intricate questions of nation building. They cannot answer even the questions of security that some of them rode to power on as former people in uniform. And yet we see our country far less secure than it has ever been. So it is a record of failure on both sides. The APC and the PDP, one is a kettle, one is a pot. And they call each other black.
Well, I think we need a break now, but when we come back, the candidates will be asked an important question. How do you plan to make Nigeria more secure? Stay with us at the 2019 presidential debates. In the middle of the country, herders versus farmers vying for grass and water has led to bloody results. Now, we've seen kidnappings and cultism in some parts of the country, and then there's the agitation of some separatists in the east. Candidates now, as president, you'll be expected to do a lot to improve security. I'm going to go to my left again for 2 minutes to the candidate for the YPP. Now, as a result of the various insecurity in Nigeria that I mentioned, the Global Terrorism Index ranks Nigeria number 3, and Boko Haram is one of the reasons for that high ranking. What will your administration do to eradicate and reduce violent extremism in Nigeria?
The first thing we're going to do is that we will bring to the problem the political will to address it once and for all. The second thing we're going to do is to tackle corruption in the military. The recent report of the International Security Studies Association has told us very clearly that one of the reasons and one of the factors that is driving the insurgency is corruption in the Nigerian military. And this has led to Boko Haram technically degrading our military instead of the other way around. We will bring to the problem intelligence, intelligent intelligence. How do we do that? We will go to the people and try to win their hearts and minds and ask them to collaborate with the government, the military, the security agencies. Give us intelligence. We will work with neighboring countries to improve the cross-border intelligence sharing, because it is the failure of that is driving Boko Haram. We will also create the economic opportunity that is feeding insurgency and terrorism in Nigeria. The lack of economic opportunity in the Northeast. Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world today, and the Northeast is the poverty capital of Nigeria. We must do something about it, and my government is going to do that. Finally, I want to say, and many people may not know, that one of the things that is feeding corruption in the military in fighting Boko Haram, many years ago, the Nigerian government entered into agreements with various countries for the production and supply of military hardware. Today, this country has bypassed those agreements and has begun and has for years been using private agents to procure military hardware. Military hardware of doubtful quality, military hardware of doubtful viability. And this is one of the reasons that our soldiers are not well equipped in the battlefield. My government will put a stop to the corruption in the military.
Fela Durotoye, Alliance for New Nigeria, what are you going to do on security?
Well, first and foremost, we must ensure that the institutions, the security agencies, are strengthened. And to strengthen those institutions, they must be properly led. Which means that you have to make sure, and we will ensure that the leadership of the police and the civil defense corps, the leadership of the army, the navy, and all of the armed forces are based not on nepotism, not on friend or man no man, as we say sometimes in Nigeria. It will be based on performance, and the brightest and the best will be selected amongst the people and promoted to lead the rest so that they can provide for them role model leadership. The second and the most important thing is that we must also make sure that our forces are motivated. And nothing demotivates the military or any of the security forces more than not having the proper equipment to be able to do the work that they have been trained to do. The third is that we must train our people. And of course, we must also enhance their morale by making sure that we treat them well while they are alive, and even should they fall in the course and the service of their nation, that they see how we treat, or those who are alive see how we treat those who have fallen. And most importantly, we must ensure that security and intelligence must be integrated in a way with the communities so that the communities feel a sense of ownership of the security and understand that they must work together to provide that information to the security agencies. Most importantly, and I think this is the last, we must work on what we call the ideology. The ideology that is currently feeding the insurgency must be tackled and addressed before it is that they get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Fela Durotoye of the ANN. Now I move to your left, to your fellow candidate of the ACPN. What, madam, are you going to do differently from what you heard your fellow candidates do on security so that we can sleep easier at night?
So number one is to send a very sharp signal that there is a new sheriff in town. Today, those who commit savagery know that there is no consequence. And whenever there is no consequence to criminality, it mushrooms. There is huge supply of bad behavior, savagery in our country because there has not been any judicial process that has led to the conviction of anyone that has killed a fellow Nigerian. Number two, we would set up instantly a SWAT team made up of the best quality brains that we can find, because we must rapidly respond to what currently exists. We want that SWAT team to make it clear that our territory will not be a conducive environment to live in and attack our country and people. Number three, the accumulation of intelligence is going to be based on the knowledge that with technology, there is now the possibility to get intelligence at a lower cost than used to be the case. And so global collaboration in that process, as well as continental collaboration, will drive our low-cost approach at intelligence gathering. Number four is that we will find all those brilliant people in our security sector as part of a security sector, major security sector reform. In finding them, we will reverse the current situation where it is injurious to an officer to be intelligent. We will find the intelligent ones and we will keep them in the place of leadership. And number five, We will broaden security to human security. With economic opportunities, people stop listening to wrong ideologies. Thank you very much.
Now, I'll go on to other questions. I've got a video for you in a moment, but I won't play it now. I'll turn to fella Durotoye first, candidate for the ANN. Now, Nigeria is big. There's 1,400 illegal border routes across our massive borders. No, we don't have Donald Trump's wall, let's just say. Yes, that's according to the Immigration Service. We have very few physical barriers, and that can't stop dissidents from infiltrating our beloved country and threatening our safety and security. As president, fella, what would you do to secure our borders?
Well, there are three things that we will do to secure our borders. The first is that we will invest in technology, especially drone technology, that allows us to be able to have oversight view of the things that are going on across our borders. Because we, like you said, we cannot build a wall right now across 1,400 kilometers, which are, the length of our borders today. So the first is that we must be able to do that. The second is that we must strengthen our border control forces and ensure that they have the motor vehicles and the equipment that they require to be able to make and ensure that they catch the people who try to cross, and when they do cross, that we also have the technology that will identify whether they're truly Nigerians or not. So we have to invest in infrastructure. We have to invest in the technological infrastructure that will help us to secure our borders well. Lastly, we must ensure that when people do cross across the borders, that they are, in a sense, repatriated by the people in the communities that they cross across. This means very simply that today, if you come into one of the border towns, the people do not feel like there's any need for them to be able to report that person who has crossed illegally. We must ensure that that is something that the people buy into. So we are going to invest in technology, equipment. We're going to invest in ensuring that our customs and border immigration and customs are strengthened. We're going to also make sure that they do have the motor vehicles, they have all the equipment they need. And lastly, we're going to work with the communities at the border to make sure that they report and they, in a sense, repatriate those guys by themselves.
Thank you. I'll turn now to the left, to the YPP candidate. We've talked about insecurity in the northeast and also in the middle belt that was mentioned, but kidnapping is a serious menace engulfing Nigeria with terrible results that are destroying lives and families. I even read a story recently about a tenant that kidnapped their landlord and used the ransom to pay the rent. Can you imagine? Yes? It's ludicrous and it's dangerous. What would you do to discourage some Nigerian youths from taking up this dangerous profession?
Well, thank you for the question. It's amusing, but it's a very serious issue. Because we know that many Nigerians have used kidnapping as extortion. That's quite clear from the stories we've heard. I have talked about the breakdown of national security in this country. And the first place to begin is with the police force. Nigeria does not have a police force in any reality that is close to anything we know in the civilized world. So my government will invest heavily in creating a 21st century police force. We will recruit, we will equip, we will train with specialization, because in today's police, any police officer can do anything. Some are in the administrative card, some tomorrow they're in the traffic, waiting you carry your car. There are all kinds of things. There's no specialization. So we will make sure that we build a 21st century police force, and the equipment is important for kidnapping. Because even now, they do try to trace kidnappers, but they don't try enough. Because the whole police is just not properly organized. So we need a modern police force to bring kidnapping down. We have 175 policemen today to 100,000 Nigerians. That's very low. The United Nations requirement is 300 policemen to 100,000 citizens. Some will argue 400 policemen to 100,000 citizens. And in Nigeria, where we have such a huge security issue, both internally, at our borders, and with terrorism, there is no more important investment than investing in the security of our lives and our property. with a police force that can check kidnapping like any modern police force anywhere in the world.
Thank you very much for that intervention. Now, I mentioned the youth losing the way. Candidates, please turn your attention to the screens once again on each side of me here. This question is from a law student in Kano. Roll the tape.
My name is Amina Bakari. I'm 20 years old. Dear aspirants, majorities of youth like me are out there unemployed and starving. Now my question is, what is your plan to operationalize the youth labor policy in order to increase the number of young people that are engaged in the labor world?
Very important but simple question. We've got a population of 200 million people and growing, and Nigeria has an alarming rate of unemployed youths that will become a security threat to Nigeria. As they say, devil finds work for idle hands to do. Highlight some of the things that could help someone like that who says, what can you do in the education field to avoid people falling into all this? I'll go to the candidate from ACPN for this first.
It's a very important problem to tackle, and that there's a sense of urgency about it. The latest NBS report on youth unemployment shows that some 29.7% young people are unemployed. Some 25.7% of them are underemployed. So you're talking of 55% of the youthful segment of our society being in a state of lack of opportunity. And it's always about employability and employment opportunity. Employability speaks to the lack of skills that are relevant to the economy. And that requires innovating in education. A key thing that we have as our agenda is Get a Skill. It targets young people and works with the private sector to be the owners of programs that develop skills in the different sectors that are viable in the economy. It also focuses on, the second focus is, of course, the curriculum, even in the tertiary and secondary institutions, to make them dynamic and targeted toward employability. We also focus on teacher quality issues. If teachers do not have the skills to train the right kind of people, they would train people that the employment market would reject. On employment opportunities, we must grow the economy beyond 1.8%. It requires massive deregulation and opening up of sectors that are currently closed to the private sector. It also requires a focus on small businesses, because in other societies, they make up as much as 75% of the job opportunities. The way out for our youth is jobs, jobs, and more jobs.
Jobs, jobs, and more jobs, says the candidate from the ACPN. Candidate for the ANN, that law student in Kano there was specifically talking about policies for labor as well. What policies would you put in, labor policies, that would improve the lot for youths in the future when it comes to employment?
Okay. Thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone that's listening. First thing I would like to say is that today our current educational system is preparing our youth for certification, not for occupation. Which means that most of the skills and mindset, the value system that is required to succeed in the marketplace and in the professional world are not even being taught in school. So I'll give you a very practical example. Today, if you want to get a job in a bank, even after passing the aptitude test, the banks are going to ensure that you go through about 10 weeks of training just to get you ready to be integrated into the banking system within their organization. The question is, why would you have to take a graduate of banking and finance who has spent 4 years in school and retrain that person for 10 weeks just to be able to make that person ready? Because throughout their 4 years in school, they were being prepared for a certificate, not for a job in a bank. What we want to do, and we will do and deliver, is to make sure that we get the users of what I call the private sector and the market, will get them involved in curriculum development. so that it is the banks that will determine what it is that you learn in school, so that by the time you're done in school, you are ready and fit for employment. This is the first and most important thing that we have to do to get that integration going. The second most important thing is we have to give the right values. And today, leadership, the values of excellence, work ethics are not being taught in school. And yet, people are hired for their technical competencies and fired for their behavioral deficiencies. And so they need to be prepared in terms of values. So we will integrate values deeply into the curriculum of our economy, of our schools, and that is how we're going to make sure that the students are ready for the labor market.
Thank you very much. Now, we're going to talk about education in the next section, so I'm going to hold off on asking you to react to that video, candidate of the YPP, and actually go to a specific challenge we have, which I mentioned in my intro, and that is when you lay your hand on the Bible, if you lay your hand on the Bible or the Quran, and you're swearing to uphold the indivisibility and territorial integrity of our nation, it's a #1 priority for you if you do become the president. Now, considering the agitation in the East, where you're from, with a breakaway republic of Biafra, this has got everyone's head scratching. What would you do to deal with that situation? For example, would you call for a referendum?
The first thing that the YPP presidency will do is to make every Nigerian feel a Nigerian. The reason you have agitations and marginalizations is because some people in this country do not feel that they belong, and they have good reason to feel that they don't belong. Let's not pretend about it. Look at the divisive leadership we have in Nigeria today. Almost 99% of the heads of the security agencies of this country come from one part of the country and one religion. Why would people in some other parts not feel that, well, if you don't think we're somebody, well, maybe we should go somewhere else? So let's address problems at their root. I began by saying that my presidency will be foundational. And the way to address this is two things. One, a constitutional restructuring of the Federal Republic of Nigeria so that different parts of this country can develop at their own pace, and we are all not choked by Abuja-centric politics. The second thing that we must do, and when I become president, this is what will happen, is that we will practice inclusive governance, but based on merit. No part of Nigeria in my presidency will complain about marginalization, because everybody in Sokoto, in Ibadan, in Nnewi, in Benue will see themselves represented in my government by their best, not by their worst.
Thank you. From the YPP candidate there. Stay with us as we take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be drilling down and we'll be asking the candidates solutions for education and healthcare. This is the 2019 presidential debates. Welcome back to the 2019 presidential debates. The next segment will be divided into two topics: education and health. Very important topics. And this time, let's turn this around a little bit, and I'm going to go right to left. I'm going to be radical and start with the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, because you indeed were an education minister in a previous administration here in Nigeria, and you're still an educator and passionate about it. Now, you've been quoted on this campaign as promising that education will become our new oil and our new gold. That's direct, that's what you said. Easily said, very difficult to do. Would you agree that Nigeria's booming population needs better education? And if so, what are your policies for delivering on that promise?
Education has always been known as the pathway to human progress. Economic and social mobility is possible through education. That's why the child of the poor can quickly rise up to middle class, upper middle class, and upper class, as the case may be. Education is the basis of provision of opportunities for people. And so one of the things we've learned is that early child care education is now paramount for giving people a leg up. In today's Nigeria, more than 65% of the children of the poor do not have that kind of access. We will commence in the change to education by ensuring that foundationally the early child care education is integrated very well. We worked on that policy when I was Minister of Education into what we offer the Nigerian people. Second part of it is that the basic education, secondary education, and tertiary education all require comprehensive reforms. The key reforms would be curricula around the 3 steps. But we would also focus on technical and innovation education, for which we put a certification arrangement within the Nigerian educational diploma and degrees. And number 3 is that teacher quality is at the heart of how effective the education system becomes. Some reasonable number of our teachers are okay, but majority of our teachers, numbering more than perhaps 50%, still have just a TC2 and are in the classroom. We must modernize teaching. We will take teaching to the prestigious profession that it once was by training the teachers massively and equipping them with the new knowledge of the new economy in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Fellow Durotoye, the flag bearer for the Alliance for New Nigeria. Now, if you look through history, you'll see that those nations that have risen up to the dizzying heights that they want to get to, I think of Singapore, for example, based it on education, on people as their raw material. Your candidate who wants the same job that you want, to your left there, just said that people are educating our people as the new oil and gas. What do you say? How important is it, and how are you going to do it, more importantly?
Well, permit me to quickly quote the former president of the United States, Bill Clinton, when he visited Nigeria in 2001. And he said something that was really significant. He said, in the 21st century, the wealth of nations will not be found under the feet of its people, but will be found between their ears. Meaning that it is really what the knowledge, we're in the knowledge era today, and it is what the people know, intellectual capital, that really turns human resource into human capital. Meaning that the more you learn, the more your capacity to earn. And so it is critical that we are able to ensure that all of our citizens have the best opportunities, not only to be able to get a foundational education, but we're able to ensure that they're able to go as far as they can go in their aspiration to get education for opportunities in the marketplace and to start their own business. So the following things need to be done. Number one, we must ensure that our teachers are people that are committed to the success of the students and not just committed to seeing them pass an exam. They must be committed to the success of the students in life and in the future. So they must ensure that we have the best teachers who are subject experts. Today you will find one teacher teaching several subjects and being a master of none. We must make sure that we develop specializations and teachers do regular exams to keep in touch with what is going on and what's going on within their field of specialization. The second thing is that we must invest in the infrastructure. The learning environment must be something that is pleasing to anyone who wants to learn. And the last one is that we must center values at the heart of our curriculum. It is extremely important that the way that we think drives the way that we will behave and the results that we will command in the future.
Thank you for that. The Young Progressives Party in power, what are you going to do for education?
Thank you. The YPP has a very, very strong attachment to education, and I happen to be a professor myself, so I have very practical experience in this area. The first thing that our government will do is that we will bring to education the political will to make it the priority, because the progress of Nigeria rises or falls on the strength of our educational system. Today, education is about 7% of our budget. In my presidency, we will begin the first budget of 2020 with not less than 20% of it devoted to education. Now, that's not enough, because you can throw money at problems and it doesn't solve the problem. The budget, 80% of the education budget is on recurrent expenditure. And that is what we're going to move away from. So we will invest in teacher training. We will retrain and recertify Nigeria's teachers at primary school level, at secondary school level especially. We will invest in curriculum reform, moving learning. 60 to 70% of the curriculum will have to move towards technology, vocational skills, and entrepreneurship. Every young man or woman coming out of an educational system in Nigeria must know how to be able to run a business, because that is how the jobs of the future are created. We will reform pedagogy, that is to say how children learn. As a professor, 60% of my class work, in terms of the grading, 60% is based on your original research. And I taught students from over 30 countries, and these are the most powerful countries in the world. So we will invest in how our children learn so that they don't just, cram and regurgitate for exams. Then we will invest in educational infrastructure, and finally, I will end ASU strikes in Nigeria.
Now, take a look again at the screens on the left and the right, candidates. You may recognize this bright young girl in the next video. She has 3.4 million subscribers on YouTube, and she has a question on education. Roll the tape.
My name is Emmanuel Samuel. I am 8 years old, and I am a YouTube video creator. We all know that education is very important, especially child education. However, the quality of education in our government school is getting poor every day. And that's why parents now put their children in private schools. And we all know that not every child can go to private school because their school fees are very expensive. Now my question is, how will your administration improve teachers' training and improve the quality of education in our government schools so that every child can have access to good education?
An 8-year-old, from the mouth of babes there. Not everybody can go to private schools. Not everybody can afford it. And it actually has a tremendous impact and stress on households that has a really big impact. Government versus private. She says government is going downhill. You want to be at the head of government. From the ACPN, what are you going to do to answer her questions?
So I would start by saying that the public schools are the basis of lifting people out of poverty. And since our flagship agenda is to lift 80 million Nigerians out of poverty, the education of the poor in the public school, because they are the ones left behind there, will be paramount for us. And so the first thing is to identify the learning outcomes that are missing in the school system today, and to fix that. To fix learning outcome, it goes to the heart of the quality of the teachers. The quality of the teachers is dependent on the kind of training that teachers get. When I was Minister of Education, we began to work on this and did accelerated program to upgrade the skills of teachers through colleges of education and the Nigerian Teachers Institute. We'll continue. We will also give greater power to the Teachers Regulatory Council to be able to regulate the teaching profession, to bring prestige and dynamism to it. We would also work on the matter of the remuneration of the teaching profession. One of the key things that we would focus on is housing all teachers. Housing all teachers. It's a program that the private sector already indicated significant interest in. Then we would focus on the curriculum issues. One of the major problems with curriculum is how dynamic it changes. And so for public education, it is critical that the private sector involvement enables us to see how critical reasoning and creativity, as well as entrepreneurship, already begin at the level of primary education. We will finally, and I think I will stop there. Because
thank you very much. Thank you for respecting the time. This is a very passionate subject, and there are voters out there that really want to know. I personally, this will influence my vote. I am a product of the Jakonde school education system in Lagos, Nigeria, in both primary and secondary. And now I'm moderating the 2019 presidential debate. You can be anything, but those schools, those children today in those same schools need support. They need to have the opportunities. As president, what will you do for them?
So let me just once again reaffirm, even as you did, that I also went to a public school. I went to staff school on the University of Ife campus and went to Moremi High School. And this was at a time in our nation's life where things worked, and everyone, regardless of whether you were, rich or poor, public schools worked for all, because that was what the governance was all about, creating opportunities for all. And that is exactly what it is that the Alliance for New Nigeria party-led government is promising. Opportunities for all, to fix education and make sure that we are back to that point where everyone who goes through a public school is able to be prepared enough for success in life. Now, to make sure that this happens, we have to understand, why are people not coming to school? Well, many of them are not coming to school in part because their parents can't even afford the transportation that gets the children to school. And so one of the things that we are doing, and we have as a program, is what we are talking about, working with public bus system and ensuring that we have a free transport system for children to schools and from schools back to their bus stops closest to their homes. Secondly, we are also going to ensure that we use the existing systems as best as possible to ensure that after-school programs are going to be strengthened. How much? Are you speaking?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So we have an after-school program that is going to be strengthened in the evenings to ensure that children who are not able to go to school in the mornings because they do have to probably meet certain needs at home are able to come in the evenings to make sure that that happens. The last one is that we will actually enforce the law in making sure that any parent that keeps their children at home are liable of being arrested.
Arrested. Okay, Wilton, can we move on to health? And I remember that 38 seconds from the first segment. I still have it in my pocket. You can have it now. So
Can I comment on education and then health?
Very quickly, okay. And then I want to give you enough time.
Very quickly, when I say that I will be the education president of Nigeria, the YPP is committed, and my government will make secondary school education free in this country. Now, a lot about making our public schools better is about the fact that we are not investing in the public schools. It's what you put in that you get out. So we will invest very heavily in the public school system of this country. I am a product of public school systems. I went to Eziama High School in Aba, Government College Umuahia, and the Federal Government College Enugu, and the University of Nigeria. So I have gone through these schools, and they have also made me what I became. They are worthy of our priority. They are worthy of our investment. And we are going to put public schools back to such a standard that a lot of private schools in this country are going to have to look for a new business model.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you
health.
About health. Now,
yes.
It's all right going to school and getting a good education, but you've got to be healthy first. You've got
yes.
to be standing on your feet. You've got to have health in order to get education, then wealth. That's Absolutely. The way it works. So let's talk about health here.
Yes.
If you looked at the statistics and where Nigeria stands on many indexes when it comes to health, we don't do well on a lot of them. I think of child mortality, for example. Yes. Health is a big problem when you've got a booming population like ours. As president, what will you do to right that ship?
My government will address the challenge of healthcare, first of all, by focusing on the quality of the healthcare provision in Nigeria. That's one. Two, access to healthcare. We will ensure universal health coverage. We know that the operational Basic Health Services Fund of the National Health Act of 2014 has not yet been kicked in. It hasn't kicked in yet. And so we're going to look at that. How do we fund health outcomes in Nigeria? For one, the budget for health is 3% of our budget. We will move it to 15% in accordance with the Abuja agreement of all African countries. It was done in Abuja here in 2001, I believe. They met and agreed, but our government has never kept to an agreement it signed and which was signed in its capital. So we will be investing a lot. One, we will make sure that each of the 6 geopolitical zones in this country has a world-class hospital. We must save the $1 billion that is lost in this country every year to medical tourism. And that medical tourism begins with some of the people who are not here. Some of them are the biggest medical tourists. 11 billion naira was budgeted for the Aso Rock Clinic over 3 years. That is more than the 6.7 billion that was budgeted for all the teaching hospitals in this country. And yet, in the Aso Rock Clinic, there are no syringes. And how do we know that? From the First Lady, a major user of that clinic. So the government is just not investing in public health. And my government will bring the necessary investments and prioritize as well primary health care.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Madam Mubi, you need to be healthy before you're educated, as I say. You heard a very clear vision for that. What's your vision when it comes to health?
So number one vision is we at least have a start-off point, the National Health Insurance Scheme. We would need to expand access to it. And the universalization would mean that even those who don't yet have work would be able to fall into that program on the basis of some cross-subsidization system that is based on transparent mechanisms of ensuring that people who are without jobs, who are unwell, would not be neglected in our society. Number two would be health practitioners. It is difficult for Nigeria and most of African countries to retain expert health people because the incentives are simply not there. And so we would look into the challenges of keeping our health professionals at home and servicing the needs of our health system. Number three is that we will in fact look at health as a system. You cannot solve one part of it and ignore the other part. And so primary health care, secondary health care, and tertiary health care would operate on the basis of a value chain approach at tackling the challenges of access to health. Number four is that health outcomes have focused often on some of the disease burdens that actually impact our productivity. And so we will begin to connect health and well-being to economic productivity. We would work with the private sector to enlighten that knowledge of the connection between healthy well-being and productivity and incentivize through tax that opportunity for people to be given the best health care possible in the country.
Thank you very much. Okay, the Alliance for New Nigeria, health is wealth for Nigeria. How are you as president going to achieve that?
Well, first of all, we will ensure that we work with the state and the local governments to be able to produce quality primary health care services at the places where it matters the most, which is right there in the communities where most of the Nigerians live. And this is very important because about 90% of the cases that eventually come into secondary and tertiary healthcare institutions could have been solved at a point in time when it was a primary healthcare issue. And we're talking about things like, malaria. We're talking about things like cholera. We're talking about things like dysentery and diarrhea. These are things that can easily be solved, first of all, at the primary healthcare center. And of course, you can even take things like high blood pressure, which if we had the equipment at the primary healthcare center, it would have stemmed the possibility of it becoming a stroke, which has to then become something that you refer to the secondary and tertiary healthcare centers. So we've got to strengthen the primary healthcare center, and since that is within the purview of the local government, but everyone in the local government is still a Nigerian, therefore it is my responsibility also, and the responsibility of the federal government to ensure that every Nigerian is healthy. Second thing that we've got to do is to make sure that everyone above the age of 60 is going to get free health care, and everyone below the age of 5 is going to get free health care, including pregnant women also. Again, this is very important because these are the people who have served and given of themselves, and in the times when they have to be, there should be a return on their service, then this is one of the things that has to happen. The last thing I'm going to quickly talk about is the fact that we must ensure that we have health practitioners as opposed to medical doctors at the primary health care level. Because, again, medical doctors are really traveling abroad, and we can train healthcare practitioners within the first 6 months, and most importantly, even youth corpers can be trained to easily diagnose primary healthcare issues that can be easily trained on.
Now, you heard from your fellow candidate that he's going to devote 20% of the budget to education and a significant amount, 15% to healthcare. That's expensive. But he seems to have a plan for that. Even in the UK and countries and America, they struggle with their education budgets. They struggle with their health. It's their biggest headache. As president, if you are set to do all these things and increase the education health budget, where are you going to find the money?
Okay, well, the first is that we are going to find the money from the savings that we have by reducing the cost and the wastage in government. We're going to find the money also by partnering with the private sector and especially also the alumni of campus, of schools. Most schools today have alumni that are, in fact, what I'll call the alumni economy of most schools are really high net worth individuals who will be willing to give back to the schools and ensure that their schools are well funded if they understood that the glory of their certificate is tied to the performance and the glory of the school now, not just when you were there. Meaning, today, if I graduated from the Obafemi Awolowo University, and today when I go back to the school, sometimes my heart breaks because I'm looking at students in rooms that I slept in Obafemi Awolowo Hall, and a room that I slept in that had 8 people on 4 double bunks now have 16 to 20 people in one room lying their head on mattresses and their bodies on the floor. But this is what's going on. We have to get back. The glory of is reflected in the certificate I carry. So my important and the most important point I'm making is that we have to get the alumni back. 68% of the assets in Ivy League schools in the United States are funded by alumni. So we've got to get the alumni to know that whilst the school has given you a head start in life, you must not forget, you must always go back to the school and restore the glory of your school.
Thank you. I will stay with that question and I will move on to the ACPN. We were talking about all these great ideas and I was asking where the money is going to come from.
Yes, I often get worried when budgets are allocated to ideas, and then when you sum up the total percentage that's been allocated, it's way beyond 100%. So I am very careful to not promise allocation to budget on the basis of global recommendations. One key thing that needs to happen with education is that we need to be more structurally balanced. A lot of what the problem is that we currently fund a dysfunctionality. Because education is in a state of dysfunction, a lot of the resources that goes into it does not buy you good outcome. And so we have to be very analytical in identifying what it is that matters the most in order to get learning outcomes. Research has shown us that teacher quality is critical. So even though teacher quality is recurrent cost, it needs to be recurrent cost that gives learning outcomes that are globally competitive. The second thing about finding the money for education is that there are many things about education today that revolve around construction. And the constructions that are done in education are not done on the basis of value for money. There are innovative ways of teaching today that do not require massive build-up of resources. A third thing is that the private sector, understanding that the products of education are important for its productivity, are more and more interested in what goes on in education. And so the partnership between government will support it. And finally, for all other expenditures of government that require private sector capital, government will focus on those while focusing on education as a priority.
Thank you very much. Now can I ask you to focus on the screens again, because when we asked,
Since I allocated budgets and a comment was made, I want to talk about where the money will come from.
30 seconds.
Yes, please. First of all, let me
Election, they very important.
But it go come and it go go.
Nigeria go take it back. Make we no fight.
Poor health outcomes while we're spending 1 trillion naira on wasteful petroleum subsidies. That is saving number one. 1 trillion naira a year is a lot of money. Saving number two, I have said it, we will partially privatize the NNPC. Not to my friends. I want to be very clear. Not to my friends.
So no cronyism is what you're saying. No cronyism.
Yes, and it will be, the private sector will own 49%, the government will own 51%. And we will sell it on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And there will be a 10% set aside for the oil-producing communities of the Niger Delta.
Okay.
So I can give you even more savings.
No, please don't. Not right now.
Okay.
Okay. So because of the
Election, they very important.
But it go come and it go go.
Nigeria go take it back. Make we no fight for election.
Because now all of us go so para. Election now do. No be die matter.
Vote, not fight.
Election no be war.
Potential aspirant is, what is your plan for the implementation of our national youth policy? How do you plan to integrate Nigerian youth into the decision-making process and make them feel a part of it? Thank you.
Clearly it was a bit low.
I heard.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so that was from a young man talking about youth empowerment. Let me begin with the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria. Reaction, please.
Our young people constitute a significant part of this country. The economic opportunities that come from their gainful engagement would be significant for accelerating our economic growth. Therefore, if we're going to claim the 21st century on the basis of the fourth industrial revolution, they must participate in the agenda of policies that would encourage that. And so we have said that 50% of our cabinet will be made up of young people. We have also promised that young people will be given not just opportunity in government, but that we would work with private sector to ensure that the kind of trainings and leadership positions that are necessary to ensure that young people are progressively doing better in society will be on the table. The third part of empowering our young people is that we would ensure that they are globally competitive. Their global competitiveness is necessary for us because we can actually earn loads of revenue as a result of the startup opportunities that our young people would have in the field of technology. As far as we are concerned, science, mathematics, and engineering are very important for the new economy. And our young people are the people who already foresee where this country should be going. And therefore, their insight into the design of the policies of dynamic growth of our economy will be absolutely important. We will then review the youth policy and update it so that it is reflective of youths that are important for our economy.
Madam, gentlemen, this is live TV, and live TV has breaks. We're going to take one. When we come back, we'll be discussing stamping out corruption, human rights, and the rule of law on the 29th